All right, welcome to my video and welcome to my coverage of my most recent chess tournament, which was the Arlington Chess Club Open. I believe it was number 58. So the event was called ACC Open number 58, and this tournament, it was a one-day tournament in Arlington, Texas, and the format was 4 rounds with a time control of game 45 delay 5. And I'm not really going to spoil any results. You can just look up the results if you want to, but I will be showing the games one by one and giving my analysis and things like that. So generally there will be a separate video for each game, and I think that's mainly it. So I think we'll get started. So yeah, so this was, I guess just to also like kind of set the set the tone here. This was my first tournament in about a month and a half, which for some people, it may not be that long of a gap, but for me it was, because over the summer when I went to all these chess tournaments in Dallas and I went to one in Houston, all these cities, it felt like I was playing a chess tournament every other week, it seemed like. And so going a month and a half without any chess tournaments for me, and the reason for that was school stuff. I had just started the semester at Baylor and was getting adjusted to that. It was going to be an interesting experience. And right before this event, I had recently crossed 2100 Blitz and 2000 Rapid for that matter. So I felt pretty good about my form, but I do also believe that online and over the board are two different dimensions. So with that said, let's just go into the game. And this first game, I was paired against Douglas Schweikte or something like that. His USCF rating is 1500. And I had played him back in May of 2021. That was actually the tournament where I broke my peak at the time. Well, it's still my peak, which is 1836. And that was actually my first round game. And it wasn't one of the more important games, really, because the games where I got my rating high were wins against a 1900 and 2000. But that was the first round game. I did need to win that game in order to, set the tone for my tournament. So this was going to be a rematch. And one anecdote that it may not be that important, but I'll show. So in that game, I was actually white, and he played the Grunfeld. So he played knight f6, g6, knight c3, d5. And I played this variation with exchanges and I went e3. E3 is a weird looking move, and honestly, you could check my blog if you want. Obviously, e4 is the mainline move, but I have some notes on my blog about it. Basically, after bishop g7, I played knight takes, queen takes, knight e2, and I believe he castled here. I went knight c3, he went queen a5, I went bishop d2, and I got some pressure. I don't remember what the exact moves were, but at some point I got on b4 to where if the queen took, yeah, I don't remember what the next moves were. But anyway, that was how that game went. And so this one was obviously going to be different because I had the black pieces. So the opening was fine. He played the Queen's Gambit. I played the declined, knight c3, bishop e7. The reason I played bishop e7 is to kind of provoke them to play knight f3 before I play knight f6, so that they don't have the option to play the exchange and then play, f3 and things like that. I think if you want a good example of that, where I played that as white, my last round game in the, actually my most recent game, besides this one, or the one before that, I don't know, it was my game against Chandler Burkett. So if you look into my blog, I think it's back to 1800 USCF, and it's the very last game. I played that way, and I mean, not that it's a masterpiece, but it was a pretty good example. So my opponent played bishop f4, and here I played c6, and c6 is pretty important because I want to play bishop f5, but if I go bishop f5, he has the option to play queen b3, and that's pretty disturbing of my position. So by playing c6 and then bishop f5, now if he goes queen b3, I have the option to go queen b6. And if he trades queens, that's not a problem for me as I open the A file. And my double pawns are not, a big deal at all. However, when I played bishop f5, he played g4. And this is one of the sharper lines for sure. And I knew that bishop e6 was the move. And after h3, I did not know what to do. I was basically on my own. So apparently I think h4 is by far the more challenging move, and it's like I can take the pawn, but you could probably play like knight f3 with tempo and then just get like very rapid development. So h3, I think it just, I'm not exactly sure what the idea is, but so here I played the move knight f6. Now, knight f6 seems like a very natural move. It just seems like a very natural developing move that you would normally play. But it's actually a mistake. And the reason it's a mistake is because it opens the door for white to play g5. Now, I guess I will mention this now that I did kind of declare one of my moves as a mistake. This is actually, I'm actually looking at a lot of this before I go through this with my coach, and even before I like go through this on my own. So some of my analysis may be inaccurate or whatever. I have checked like with the computer like some key moments and things like that, but I also just wanted to get that out there. But what I learned when I was reviewing this with the Explorer is that you want to play this certain pawn break, which I actually did a move later after knight f6, knight f3. You want to play h5. Now, why h5? The reason that's so effective is because of how his pawn structure is configured. So when I play h5, he has to make a decision. He can either leave it there, which would not be a good idea because then I would take and possibly even exploit this rook, this pin, excuse me. And even if I don't, I have multiple attackers on the g4 square, so I would at least win a pawn. He can take, which now isolates this pawn and opens the h-file for me. Or he can play g5, as he did in the game. And so let's say that I just played... Now, I do think you can play h5 immediately. I'm not exactly sure, but the theoretical move is knight d7, bishop d3, and then h5. And just imagine if we had it like this. Obviously, he has to do something about it. And if he plays g5, then he's not really attacking my knight. In fact, I would just drop a pawn. So I think white is supposed to take, and, I can't take back because of the queen, but he has doubled h-pawns to work with. I think I can play knight h6 here, but I don't remember for sure. And, it's fine for black. I mean, black is temporarily down a pawn, but I literally don't care. I literally don't care about that. So anyway... So knight f6 was a little mistake, just something I learned afterwards. So now after h5, my opponent played g5. And here I played knight e4. Now, this was a moment to where I just don't remember what I had calculated if he takes. Because if he takes, I take. They're probably... If he goes knight e5, I'm going to take g5. I had figured that out. And if he goes knight to d2, I think... Because if I take here, then I believe he just takes my bishop, then takes the pawn. I also saw a line where if he just takes the pawn immediately, I can just double his pawns. But honestly, I think what I was planning on doing was just bishop d5. Just bishop d5, just protecting the pawn. And I think in my mind, I thought that my pawn could be pretty dangerous here. Just controlling a bunch of key squares. Now that I look at it, maybe queen c2 just rounds it back up. I guess I could always take this guy, but honestly, I just don't think bishop d5 is a very good move now that I think about it. So I do think if that sequence had happened, I probably would be best off taking the pawn. If he takes e4, I'll take f4 and double his pawns. And this is a very bad pawn structure for him. And if he takes g5, I'll obviously take back. And I think I saw some line like queen d5, and I believe he could just go, bishop g2 looks good, queen f3 also looks good. He could maybe play f3, but that looks a little bit risky, but something like that. Probably queen f3 so that, I don't know. I don't even know if he wants to castle queenside, to be completely honest. What is the computer saying? I'm pretty sure the computer was vouching for this line. Okay, yeah, the best move here is, well, it's switching. It says queen c2 as well. That makes sense. I think all those moves I mentioned were acceptable. So anyway, So I played knight e4, and he just goes h4, which makes sense, just defending this guy. And here, I played bishop b4, just hoping to get something out of this pin. And he actually played very accurately here. He played queen b3, attacking my bishop. Because queen c2 I don't believe works out because I can play queen a5 and it gets way more difficult for him. And I even think if he plays a move like rook c1, I can just take a2 because the knight is pinned. I saw that line. But queen b3 prevents all of that. And so now if I play like queen a5, he can just go like rook c1 and there's no more queen a2 because his queen defends. So here I play queen b6. The threat is to take c3, take b3, then take c3 again. So that's my threat, which he defends. He plays rook c1. And here I just play knight d7. And I figure there's no real way to increase the pressure on the pinned piece. And when you do have a pinned piece, you want to leave it there for as long as possible. So I just play knight d7. Maybe c5 will be an idea later on. You know, I could play a move like c5, and if he takes, I could bring my knight in. That could always be an idea. And here, he played a move that I thought was a little bit weird, to say the least. He played bishop h3. Now, this isn't necessarily a tactic per se, but I'll give you a second to pause the video if you want. Black to play and basically make a better decision than I did. So feel free to pause your video and we'll be right back. All right. So if your answer was to trade the bishop, then you're absolutely correct. If your answer was just to play a move like c5 like I did, then that's not very good. And so why is bishop takes h3 the best move? It's actually very simple. This rook has moved, and once I take h3 and he plays rook takes h3, he cannot castle. The king cannot castle, and so that king is going to be a weakness long term. Now, there's no way I can really get to it right now. It's kind of safe, I guess, in the center, but I don't know, if I just like, you know, maybe just castle and then play like c5 and just try to open things up, you know, that king could be in danger. Like, imagine if they take, knight takes, I get in on the d3 square. There are certainly possibilities. However, here I played c5. And the sequence he played, bishop takes e6, I played f takes e6. And I guess now that I think about it, could I have played queen takes? I'm not... Well, queen takes drops the pawn on d5. No, it doesn't, because his knight is pinned. Was queen takes better? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Yeah, queen takes was actually a bit better. And it actually makes sense now that I think about it. Because when I played f takes, I'm basically committing my pawn structure. My e6 pawn is weak. And as we might see later on, this g6 square could be very vulnerable. So yeah, I totally should have played queen takes. I didn't even consider it, honestly. I'm not exactly sure why, but anyway, I played f takes, so that was also a mistake. And here he just castles. And at first it seemed to me like, you know, he's castling into an open kingside position, like that shouldn't be good. But how can black actually get there? Like, all my pieces are discombobulated. I haven't even like castled myself yet. So since I haven't castled, my rooks haven't connected. So I'm not sure what to do. And this was a bit of a weird game because I'm pretty sure it was 45 minutes per side. I'm pretty sure I got down under 5 minutes by like move 13, I want to say. It was something weird like that. Like, it felt like, you know, the middle game had just begun and I was already in endgame type time pressure. So it really started to get scary here, especially given, you know, I'm playing a 1500, and if I lose to a 1500 in round 1, then that's not going to be very good. So here I played c4. I don't know if it was good. I just, you know, I think it was a little bit of a panic move, queen c2, and this is where I realized that if I just play a move like knight c3, he can play queen g6, and that is not going to be fun to deal with. And if I don't do anything, now there's no more pin, so he can just take. So I played bishop takes c3. He played b takes c3. And here I castled. And it's just a bad position, to be completely honest. Knight e5, knight takes e5, bishop takes e5. And, right, he just plays this savage move f3. Just kicks my knight out, and his queen is ready to swing into g6. And, right, now he plays queen g6. And here, I mean, like here, I almost just blundered queen e8, queen takes g7, checkmate. So the queen is threatening checkmate alongside the bishop. So here I played queen e7, he played queen takes h5, and I should be losing here. You know, the end of this video is going to be a little bit anticlimactic. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe he shouldn't have traded bishops. There's no bishop takes g7, is there? And then like g6. Okay, computer's not recommending it, so computer, for the record, says bishop f4, which totally looks good because yes, it might divert the bishop from this attack, but you keep the bishop. The bishop's dominant over my knight. I mean, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to maximize that, but like g6 is coming. Like, is this survivable for black? I mean, anyway, I think allowing the trade was a big mistake. Even if technically, you know, white is better. I played rook f5, which was a nice move because it prevents g6. Otherwise, his threads just play g6 and then wallop me on the h7 square. And this was the last move I had recorded, or I think I even stopped recording. A lot of this was from memory, and I just stopped notation because my time was low. And I can't tell you exactly what happened, but I'm pretty sure he allowed me to even take on e3. I started to get a little bit of counterplay, and then he just hung his queen. Like, in time pressure, he wasn't in all that much time pressure. I was the one in time pressure. He just made an instant move and just hung his queen. So, you know, there's that. I was already getting back into the game anyway, I think, before he did that. So, you know, like he had played like h5, I think, at some point. But, I mean, what does that matter? But anyway, yeah, I mean, pretty good game. Well, actually not a pretty good game. So I think the key moments from this game were, you know, my opening. I'll have to review this g5, this g4 line for sure, because, you know, it's pretty aggressive and I think it's pretty good. And, right, you know, like not to play knight f6 too early. And, right, I think this was also a key turning point because bishop h3, I should just trade. I should just trade and then just, you know, take it from there. I mean, even like later on, like once I realized my king could be weak, it might just be better in retrospect just to like trade pieces and then trade queens. But anyway, I don't know. I thought it was a pretty rocky start to the event, but you know, we're 1 for 1. We won the first game and can only focus on the present and the future. So, all right, I think I'll end the video here. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you for the next one. Take care.